Best said he feared retribution. Others have pointed to evidence strongly suggesting that the decision not to include the cartoons in the book came from the very highest levels of the university itself and had something to do with the Yale administration's concern about offending Saudi Arabian princes with deep pockets. The powerful impact of Saudi money in the West has already made itself clear. Countless mosques and madrasas in Europe would not exist if not for Saudi money. The Washington Post's resident authority on Islam, John Esposito, is the director of an institute on Islam at Georgetown University that was funded entirely by the Saudi prince for whom it is named and who himself handpicked Esposito to run it. It is one of the most despicable and grotesque aspects of the present conflict that even as George W. Bush sent soldiers to put their lives on the line to fight armed jihad, he continued to be extremely friendly with Saudi leaders who fund schools and mosques and institutions in the West that teach and preach jihad and that give it both moral and material support. So far, those who have taken an open stand against the Islamization of the West have been people more or less identified with the right. For doing so, they've been criticized intensely by many on the left. This is madness, and it only shows how far many people on the left have migrated philosophically from being true liberals. They don't seem to know what liberal values are anymore, and they don't recognize an absurdly obvious threat to liberal values when it's staring them right in the face. To put it simply, this is and should be a liberal battle. A battle for freedom of speech, for freedom of religion, for the equality of the sexes, and the right of people, including gays, to live their lives as they see fit. As Abraham Lincoln famously said, a country cannot remain half slave and half free. Permit tyranny in your midst, and you'll end up tyrannized yourself. In the wake of the terrorist attacks in London and Madrid, in the wake of the Van Gogh murder, and the cartoon riots, and the months of nightly disturbances, complete with cries of Allahu Akbar in the French suburbs, it is clear that the West freedom now comes with an asterisk. In Western Europe, many leaders have already chosen a gradual and amiable accommodation with extreme illiberality over an unpleasantly confrontational defense of liberty. Apparently, in the view of all too many of these leaders, the only hope for peaceful coexistence with the Muslims in their midst lies in an ever more vigorously exhorted and enforced deference to and accommodation of Islam. Increasingly, non-Muslim women are enjoined to respect an ideology that views them as whores, who are in profound need of merciless discipline. Gays are enjoined to respect an ideology that would condemn them to death. Free people are enjoined to respect an ideology that in larger and smaller ways is already stripping them of their freedom. When I first moved to Europe, the challenge to freedom was still relatively invisible. As I've said, you had to veer away from the tourist centers to even begin to get the real picture. No more. On a couple of nights last January, only 10 minutes walk from my front door, there were violent riots on the main street of Oslo, a street that is generally quiet and orderly, if not downright dull. But on those January nights, Oslo looked like Gaza at its worst. In fact, the rioters' motive was supposedly rage over events in Gaza. In reality, the riots were nothing more than a brutal show of force by young men who probably could not find Gaza on a map, but who were plainly determined to bend Norway to their will. As such, it was no isolated incident, but yet another step in a relentless process that I began witnessing 11 years ago in Amsterdam. And of course, this isn't just a European phenomenon. Events like the prosecution of Ezra Levant and Mark Stein made it clear to me that the one major mistake I made in my book, While Europe Slept, was in underestimating the vulnerability of North America to the same forces I saw bringing down freedom in Western Europe. 9/11, 7/7 in London, 4/11 in Madrid. After each of these and other atrocities, European officials and journalists wasted no time reminding everyone that only a tiny minority of Western Muslims are terrorists. And of course that's true. But it's not the point. Jihadist terrorism is only a distraction from the subtler forms of jihad going on around us. Indeed, terrorism, as many jihadists have realized, is counterproductive, because it only underscores the fact that there is indeed a jihad underway, and it draws media attention and it causes a public reaction. But what the media can, and to an extraordinary extent does avoid covering, and what the public can therefore fail to fully notice and comprehend, are the subtler, less spectacular, everyday aspects of jihad and of the capitulation thereto. And these developments are far more dangerous than terrorism. For terrorism cannot destroy the freedom of the West. What can destroy it is a gradual, broad-based, officially unacknowledged, and almost imperceptible day-by-day adjustment to Islam and to Sharia law, an adjustment that, if allowed to continue, will indeed ultimately lead to the end of freedom as we know it. This is the silent jihad and the silent surrender, and we're living right in the midst of it. And the unfortunate reality is that we can't sit back and relax in the assurance that our mainstream media will keep us fully informed about the ongoing threats to our freedom, and that our governments will protect us from those threats. They won't. If we cherish our freedom, we have to keep our eyes open and our ears open, and not be afraid to speak about what we see and hear, honestly, openly, and boldly. Thank you.